The Biden administration is criticizing Republicans for their reaction to the Alabama embryo ruling. In a memo, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre says, quote, Republican elected officials are shamelessly attempting to erase their own records on IVF, or in vitro fertilization. The problem is they can't. Multiple GOP lawmakers expressed support for IVF after the decision, but previously supported an anti-abortion rights bill that does not have carve-outs to protect the procedure. The director of the White House Gender Policy Council, Jennifer Klein, joins us now. That title is a mouthful, but basically it means that you are the point person at the White House when it comes to reproductive rights.
That is exactly right.
Thank you so much for being here with us, Jennifer. So is it a good thing in some ways that this ruling has prompted so many Republicans, including former President Trump, to come out and say they do support IVF?
Well, let's start by taking a step back to think about how we got here. So first of all, there is chaos in Alabama. At least 3 fertility clinics have paused their operations, including for people who are literally in the middle of undergoing in vitro fertilization. Patients are not even sure if they can remove their embryos from Alabama or whether that too would be illegal under Alabama law after this ruling. So there's chaos, but that chaos is actually created or was created when Roe versus Wade was overturned. And that, in turn, was created by the appointment of 3 Supreme Court justices who brought the majority, who was able to do that. And former President Trump has been quite clear that he's proud that he overturned Roe versus Wade. And, you know, what we've seen across the country is the devastating consequences of the loss of a fundamental constitutional right. So that started with 21 states now have extreme abortion bans, some without exception for rape and incest, many of which criminalize doctors for providing medical care. Republicans in Congress have proposed 3 national abortion bans. People are being turned away from emergency rooms. So, you know, what started as preventing people from making very personal medical decisions and taking away the right to choose is now taking away the right in a different way for people to, women and families, to make decisions to have a family, to start a family.
So when conservatives say that this decision by this group of Alabama judges has nothing to do with Roe v. Wade, you say that's not true.
It has everything to do with Roe versus Wade. If Roe versus Wade were still the law of the land, if there was still a fundamental constitutional right to make decisions about your own body, this Supreme Court could not have made the decision that it did.
So legally, does this Alabama ruling open the door for something similar in other states, or do you believe that this is a one-off?
Well, I think this decision is extreme. I also think that, you know, not just me, lots of people are looking to see what other states will do. And it does open the door to you know, what we've seen already happening, which is really extreme action being taken by states across the country.
What can the administration do to protect access to IVF?
So what we've been doing, really, again, since the Dobbs decision came down, we will continue to do, which is do whatever we can by executive action to protect access to abortion and contraception and other reproductive health.
Is there a lot you can do?
Well, you know, what we have done so far shows that there is actually a lot that we can do, not on IVF in particular, but I would say more broadly on reproductive health and rights. Things like protecting access to emergency rooms when people come to an emergency room needing an abortion as the medical care that they need in the middle of an emergency. Protecting access to contraception, which crazily seems also to be at risk. Protecting the right to travel for patients who are trying to leave a state where abortion is not legal to go to a state where they can get a legal medical service. And the Department of Justice has actually intervened in a case in Alabama exactly on that point. So those are just a few examples of what we've been able to do, what the president has been able to do by executive action. But again, he has been clear since the day the Dobbs decision came down, overturning Roe versus Wade, that the only way to actually replace the rights that were lost is to pass a federal law, pass federal legislation that would restore the protections that existed under Roe versus Wade for nearly 50 years.
Are you in communication with these clinics and hospitals in Alabama that have halted the IVF procedures for now. Now that Alabama state officials have said they're not planning on going after people who perform IVF, are you urging those clinics to reinstate the procedure?
You know, those clinics have to make their own decision based on the situation in Alabama. What they determine is the law in Alabama. You know, we've been reaching out to patients and healthcare providers just to express our concern and to talk to them about what they are experiencing on the ground.
So the limbo, at least in Alabama, continues. Jennifer Klein, the director of the Gender Policy Council at the White House, thanks so much for joining us.
Great to talk to you, as always.